Have you ever worked with a group or a person that suffers from unsecured commitments and uncommunicated expectations?
I feel like that's almost everyone we work with, right? No, what's interesting, I will say a lot of my work is almost like corporate therapy. I'm there to ask the questions. And a lot of times the questions I'm asking help the manager, help the CEO, whoever. And I always get this response, and almost every time I work with a client, they're like, "Oh, now that you asked that question, I'm thinking this," or "These questions have helped me figure out that this is really what I wanted." So I
Mhm.
think a lot of times we talk expectations, and we don't even know what our own expectations are.
What is going on, L&M family? I'm back with a super awesome person. And the reason I say super awesome is because we've had a couple little chats, and every time it's just like fun. And so I imagine me and Miss Samantha are going to have a ton of fun today. And just so you know a little bit about her, she is a people first process improvement specialist. If y'all know me, you know I'm all about people, and that process improvement stuff kind of tickles my fancy. She's also got some expertise, experience, wizardry in the virtual assistant system automation space, which
Mhm.
I'm probably going to get nosy about that. If you need help cleaning up your business, Miss Samantha can help you. So here we go to Miss Samantha. Samantha, how are you?
I am feeling good today. I'm trying to match the level of your energy though. So let me try to get hype with you.
You know, it's funny when I'm like talking, kind of figuring out or negotiating a deal with clients, I can
Mm.
always see their face. They're like, is this dude for real? What's he on? And I have to, I'm like, oh, I need to tell you, like, you think my energy is elevated now? Wait till I'm in front of a group of people.
Right? Totally different. You're going to think I'm on drugs or something, but it's just me. It's just how I am.
Yeah, yeah. But I
Wow.
think that's the awesome thing because I feel like I know that my energy is always amplified by the person I'm talking to. And like I said, like your energy is awesome. So we're going to try. We don't need to melt the internet with this conversation, but we can get close to it. How about that?
Yeah, I'm not trying to be Kim K today, but yeah, no, I mean, like you and I, we both dive into some really hard topics with our clients. And so
Yeah.
if we're not bringing that fun energy, then it's going to be way harder to get people where we're trying to take them, right?
Yes, yes, because leading change is painful and uncomfortable.
Mhm.
I know I tinker around with people's stuff. I love doing that. And I also know I don't like people tinkering around with my stuff.
Right?
Right?
Like, back off. What you
Back
trying to
off.
do? Right? I know I was going into a client. So I was on site with a client the other day, and I kind of had just like fire rounds, like back to back meetings with some of their managers. And I remember one person left and told the other manager that was coming in, good luck. I was like, you don't need luck with me. Like, we're going to be friends, but we're going to talk about some hard stuff, but don't be wishing good luck in front of me.
Look. Oh, so have you ever had anybody say, all right, it's your turn in the principal's office?
I haven't had that, but I have had a lot of what I do is usually in groups. So I only do one on one when I know it's going to be okay, we're going to dive into some stuff and I want you to feel totally vulnerable. So a lot of times in group meetings, I have had people pause and go, well, damn, Sam, you're really going for the jugular. And I'm like, someone's got to ask these questions. I don't know why you didn't ask yourself this question a year ago, but I'm here now. So we're going to dive into it, right?
Yeah, like why fiddle fart around? Let's make something happen. All right,
Yeah.
so obviously we love that torture, whatever that is, or that experience, right? Because it really is like
Yeah.
let's have the real conversations about the real stinky stuff so we can do something about it.
Yeah.
Now,
Hmm.
what was it about? Like, how did you get to doing that kind of work? Because I don't ever remember hearing about a career opportunity in process improvement, automation, optimizing situations. Like, that was never a thing even discussed when I was in high school. How does that happen for you?
Yeah, definitely a non-traditional route. So I think in every one of my jobs when I was in corporate, I was always kind of in a position, or rather, I willingly put myself in the position of saying, this does not make sense. Why are we doing it this way? Like, I'm not trying to be stressed out at work every day. So how can I make this easier for me? In the office world, I started out as a recruiter in the
Mm.
staffing industry. And if you know anything about staffing, it's very similar to construction as far as like the traditional work week is like 50 plus hour
Oh
weeks.
yeah. Mhm.
And it was very quick for me. It was like, I'm not trying to live like this. Like, I love the company. I love the people I'm helping. I was staffing a lot in warehouses. So the
Mm.
people I were meeting were people that were genuinely wanted jobs and just wanted to show up and work, didn't care about being sweaty. I had a lot of immigrants from the Middle East coming into my staffing office. I was like, I love what I'm doing, but I don't love y'all enough to like live at the office. And so it was just a position of, okay, how can I make this a little bit better? And then I went into a home building, a residential building company, and then I also went into a software company. And in every circumstance, there was always moments of, this is not working. It's not working for me. I could see that other people around me are stressed out. Like, I don't want to join in the let's just be victims of the work schedule approach. And I was very fortunate in the company I worked at, that was a software company, they focused a lot on lean. They went a little
Mm.
bit more into the lean Six Sigma than I have a
Yeah.
preference for with my clients, but I was introduced to all of these different elements. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can take what I've learned from HR, what I've learned from recruiting, and marry it with this operations and the puzzle piecing. And this is what's going to like really make a difference for people. And I think even with everything we might see on LinkedIn post pandemic of work life balance, there's still so many people living at their jobs, right? Living in
Yep.
a world where they don't know what the word balance means, that they've never experienced that. And so it's been a fun journey to like puzzle piece what I've learned and then help put the pieces together for other people.
Oh, so I love the way you like puzzle piecing because yes, right?
Mhm.
Like it's in some situations, some teams, some departments, some businesses, it's a blank puzzle piece, like just pile of pieces. In others, like they've got the frame, they've got the outline done, and they're building out
Mhm.
the corner, and they're kind of stuck. I love that frame because yes, that's exactly what it feels like. Now you went from
Mhm.
recruiting, kind of HR, went to residential, went to software, which most people, or maybe I'll just say this in my simple, lazy thinking, like those are totally different situations.
Mhm.
But because of the work that I've done, something tells me you saw some commonalities in those different industries that were like, wait a minute, there's another layer here that we're
Yeah.
missing. Yeah?
Absolutely. I think people really what when it comes to niching down, which everyone in America, we're really the only country that says find a niche, right? So people that entrepreneurs I've met that come from like the UK, Africa, all these different countries, they come to the US and they're like, oh, I didn't know I needed to have a niche, right? Really, that's because there's just different messaging, right? It's the same
Right.
problem. It's just like, how does your person think about that problem? What are the words they use, right? And so
Yep.
I definitely saw a lot of commonalities in all of those areas. First and foremost was people don't think they're going to be friends with me at first. They're like, who is this
Oh,
high energy, kind of crazy person? Like, what is happening? Let me have some distance, right? And all of a sudden, they're like, oh, okay. And they start telling me their secrets. I've always had like that therapist aspect to it, right? So dealing with the software guys, the nerds in software and the geophysicists I worked with is like, same kind of nerd I'm going to meet when I go to the construction site. Like they just don't know that they're similar, right? So I think just dealing with those personalities that don't often speak up, that usually hold things in and try to just go with the flow. There are a lot of similarities there. Same
yeah.
thing in the warehouse. People that just want to show up and do their work and they see all these bigger problems, but they don't always feel comfortable speaking up. And it's about giving them the avenue to share their challenges and share the ideas that they have and say, hey, like you work here every day, you have a perspective that matters. And so that was really common across the industries. I see you thinking there. Are you kind of
Oh,
realizing the same
yeah.
thing? Yeah.
Before that, I want to give the L&M shout out to Miss Stephanie. Miss Stephanie left me an awesome little voicemail on the LinkedIn DM. And let me just, it's paraphrased, so I'm not going to play it. But she says, thank you, Jesse. You refilled my entrepreneurial batteries. You gave me a lot to think about, and I appreciate it. And of course, getting that little voicemail was extra special And the reason I wanted to share it is because we just had a conversation. And folks, gifting people with your time, being fully present, listening to them, sharing your insight, demonstrating interest and appreciation can transform somebody's day. Stephanie gave me that opportunity to do that because we scheduled the call. So, Stephanie, thank you for sharing that. And to the rest of the L&M family out there, reach out and touch someone. I mean, so you talked about, and I love it because in construction, you know me, I'm in the field. When I say field, I'm talking about my heart. I'll say, let me just be clear.
Ah,
Most of my clients are general contractors, and I spend most of my time with department heads, VPs, like folks that are not in the field because I'm a
yeah.
carpet dweller, right? I'm a house cat now. I can't really claim to be a field guy anymore.
Yeah.
But my heart is with the men and women that are out there sweating and freezing and
Mhm.
busting their knuckles to build the things that everybody else manages. So I want to come back to this, but you said speaking up avenue, right? Giving the workers in the warehouse the avenue to speak up and point out or even address problems that they're living. So I want to come back to that because I that's my favorite subject. But before we get into that, I'm suspecting, because I know me, the way I like to think about it is I was or am chronically discontent. Meaning, if a process is wonky or funky or just feels like it's taking too much, I mean, if somebody wants me to participate in something, I'm like, yes, my conditions are maximum of 4 clicks. If I got to do
Mm,
more than 4 clicks to be a part of this thing, call somebody else, which is kind of not nice, but there's inefficiencies in a lot of things. And that's the point. It's like, how is it going to be a bazillion emails? Is it going to be a bazillion texts and calls?
mhm.
And like, if that's the case, probably not. But if I can get a calendar invite, click on that, hit a link and be on the thing, hell yeah, I'm in. So, anyways, all of that to say, I had that itch, that chronic discontent when I was an installer, when I didn't have a lot of influence
Mhm.
and I complained about things. And then I got promoted, and then I would start changing things to make it better, right? To make it
Mhm.
better. Now, the natural consequence of that is resistance and friction. And so, my question to you is as you were coming up and finding your way through, I'm sure you couldn't just leave wonky, goofy things alone, and you were compelled to do something about them and you faced friction before what you do now. For a young professional that's in that situation, like how did you deal with that and what do you recommend someone who's in that situation now? How would you
Yeah.
advise them to navigate that?
So that's a really great question because a lot of I do work so much with kind of similar to you, those high level executives, those mid level managers, and then the young professionals that are like maybe just starting out. And this is something I see so common is that there are some really great young professionals that have such great ideas. They're also used to kind of things being easy, right? Like we're in high school, everything's structured for me. I go to college, I know now I got to sign up for classes, but still things are structured. I just follow the map and I show up to school. So when they get to a job where there are inefficient processes, they feel the frustration more than maybe some of us that are jaded and have been
Mm,
there for so many
mhm.
years, right? And the difference for me, sorry, let me actually back up and say, if you are feeling that frustration and you haven't problem solved before and you're bringing up those frustrations, you're going to be positioned as the complainer. You are now branded as the problem child. I have seen people get kicked out of meetings because they're like, well, you're always showing us what's wrong. Like, we don't need that, right? And it's easy to get into that mindset and to just be labeled that way. And so, what you have to do is say, okay, I can't just not complain. Like I can't leave this alone because this is a problem for
Yes.
me and for everyone else, but how do I actually move this forward? And the biggest thing is understanding how the other person sees it, right? So when we
Mm,
in lean, we talk about voice of the customer. The
yep.
voice of the customer doesn't just mean our external customers. They're the most important customers because they're paying us, right?
Yep.
But we've got internal customers, right? So
Yes.
we
Yes.
got to say, okay, I've got this problem. How does my manager view this problem? How does, like, why would they care about me solving this, right? If I think about my
Mhm.
recruiting days and, okay, we've got a whole bunch of applicants, we don't have a great way of tracking this, what have you. It's frustrating for me because it's a lot of data entry. I got to waste time finding the information. I feel disorganized. Like, that's annoying. But what does the owner of the staffing agency care about this? Well, he wants me to fill the orders for our clients faster.
Yes.
right? So it's like, okay, what's the big money talk for my manager or for my peers? Like if they feel like data is disorganized, hey, you want things faster from me? We've got to fix X, Y, and Z. So we've got to say this is the outcome of the solution, but this is where the problems are coming from. So if we
Yeah.
can stop complaining first and just
Yeah.
use the complaining as like maybe the reasoning behind why we want change, that's how a young professional can now really frame their value in a company instead of being that problem child.
Oh, that's expert advice. There you go, L&M family. You got some
We're
gold right
done.
there. I worked for a pipe fitter, Ed Mauricio. I was his helper for a couple of years, and
Mm,
brilliant advice. Like he slapped me silly, really, because I was a complainer, but I didn't
mm,
understand that I was a complainer. I thought
mhm,
I'm helping people realize that there's better ways to do things, and because I heard the saying, right, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. And so Ed said, Jesse, yes, the squeaky wheel gets the oil, but the broken wheel gets replaced. And I'm like, oh, damn, yes, oh, got
ah.
it. If you never stop squeaking, maybe you're broken, right? And then he
Yeah.
went on, he's like, Jess, don't complain. He's like, you take on every fight, every
Mm,
inefficiency, everything that bugs you. It's a big, you make a big damn deal about it. He's like, how about you stop complaining or like he said, don't complain about anything that you're not prepared to take action on.
mhm.
And then I'm like, oh, got it. Like, okay, if there's something, sure, there's a million things for me to whine about. But if I'm not prepared to take ownership and do something about it, bring it to resolution, do the thinking that you described, like connect it to the outcome and contextualize it so that the decision maker can be on board with the solution. If I'm not prepared to do all of that, don't say nothing. Suck it up and deal with them. Like, done.
Yeah.
Totally transformed my trajectory because I was not building credibility by complaining all the time. It took me a
Mhm.
long time to figure that out.
And I hope whoever's listening can be like, okay, I'm gonna just take the lesson from them and not try to learn it for myself. And what I love about what you said is it has so many different applications. Like same thing with gossiping in the office. You're gossiping about it, but are you prepared to tell that person how you feel about this problem? If you're
Yeah.
not prepared for that conversation, I don't know why you're talking to Sally about it.
Yep.
Shush, right?
Right. You're not. You're making things worse, and
Yeah.
even more. I think that the thing that we miss, you're undermining your own credibility. Like
Hmm.
that's what's happening. I am eroding the trust. If I decide to gossip to you about somebody, I'm gonna feel good talking smack about somebody. But the
Yeah.
risk is that you're gonna say, like, Jesse, I thought Jesse was a higher caliber person, but he's a smack talker. Because if he's gonna talk smack to me about that person, the likelihood is that he's going to be talking smack about me to somebody else,
Yeah.
right? And then so there goes the whole credibility button. So excellent point
Yeah.
on the what is it? The gossip, the cheese man, no cheese man plan. I mean, even though we love the
Yeah.
cheese man, right?
I think something else we missed as well, though, going back to solving the problem.
Mm,
Check it out, hometowners. So Primo, he's a little bit embarrassed about like asking for some backup, some esquina. And so I want to hit you up and like if you're digging this content, pues give it un like, give it the stars or leave a comment. But if you really, really want to see Primo like get all chiflado, like for the reels, hit him up on the socials, Holmes. Like if you give him a comment in the socials and let him know what you thought about the thing, pues he's gonna light up. But only do it if you mean it, because yeah, you already know how Primo is. Se cree mucho el cabrón. So if you could do that, if you could leave a comment or a rating or the stars or whatever, that would be cool, man.
A lot of people, because I hear this also from a lot of managers, because part of ultimately from processes, we got to make job descriptions, right? We shouldn't have job descriptions just because we see a problem, but it has to relate back to a process. And I'll start talking to managers. I'm like, okay, well, what's the expectation for this person? We've got to have clarity here. We've got to say, like, what does success look like for this person? And a lot of times, one of those bullet points is, well, I want them to be able to solve problems. If they see something, I want them to come with me with a solution. And what I realize is a lot of people have never been in that position, have no idea how to solve the problem, which is
Yep.
something then, okay, now I then work with my clients and their lower level team members say, okay, this is how we're going to start solving problems. This is how you can approach it, right? We do that training. But for anyone that's listening, also, I want to say, you don't always have to come to your manager with a solution, but you can say, I see this problem and it's affecting XYZ. So if you could still frame it in the, this is why you care about it, right? If you, and then say, I need help finding a solution, or how is the best way for me to approach this, right? So a lot of times we hear all the time, well, come to me with a solution. And you're like, I don't know how, like, can I ask for help to find, like, am I allowed to ask you questions? Right? It's okay if we don't always have a solution, but let's get going on the action plan, still getting out of that complainer mindset, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that takes us back to the idea of speaking up, providing them
Mm-hmm.
an avenue, and the idea of internal customers, because that has been, I'll say this, at a certain point I've had some influence, and one of my jobs, I say jobs because I've had like a bunch of different jobs in my
So many
career.
hats.
Yeah, yeah. My responsibility was to support the business unit and recruit people. I worked with a lot of staffing agencies, like partnered up to find people, blah blah blah. I would analyze financial projections and manpower projections and reconcile that, find out who's lying and find out where the problems. Like I did all that fun stuff. And then I did like the
Yeah.
lean stuff, right? That was my side job.
Mm-hmm.
And every so often the project teams would want me to come to the project to like look deep into a problem and help launch something or help shore something up. And my deal was this: yes, I will come to your project on one condition. You do not introduce me to the general contractor. And this is when I was on the trade side of the business. You do
Mm-hmm.
not introduce me to the GC. And if by chance we end up crossing paths, I'm nobody of consequence. I'm just a damn fly on, like I'm just a visitor taking your time. Because if they knew that I was responsible for labor, they would be hounding me. And
Mm-hmm.
so I got in a little bit of trouble for that. They're like, Jesse, you can't do that. They're our customers. Like, yeah, no, I agree they're our customers. But we have so many resources dedicated to serving the external customer. You don't need me doing that too, because the
Mm-hmm.
resources we have serving our internal customers are thin. And I want to
Mm-hmm.
be that resource. Now, that takes me to this idea of helping people speak up or find an avenue to speak up, and what you described, right? When you have a leader that says, don't bring me problems, bring me solutions, which sounds cute, but it's not that easy. And introducing people, you said it. Some people don't know how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so you gotta, like, some people get autonomy and they lose their mind because they don't know how to deal with autonomy, but they want it. And I think that's all, like within that ball of knots, this idea of helping the workforce, the people closest to the delivering of the value, helping them speak up and surface problems and do something about the problems. What does that look like? Like in when you think about helping people get there, what should a change agent expect from
Mm-hmm.
that audience?
Yeah, so really interesting. We're talking about autonomy, right? Especially when we look at a world where, again, post pandemic, everyone's like, well, I might leave a job that pays really well for this culture because I have more autonomy here, right? And that's going to go hand in hand with managers that are like, I want accountability. I want my team to hold themselves accountable. And I'm like, okay, have you taken your dog for a walk? Have you taken your dog off the leash? Are you confident they're going to stand right next to you when you take them off the leash? Are they going to run? Are they going to chase the school? Like, what are they going to do? Right?
Yeah.
Like, so we definitely don't want short leash management, but someone that's never even had long leash management, like they're not going to do well. You take the leash away altogether.
Mm.
And we got to like, autonomy is not saying like, go figure this shit out yourself. Like,
Right.
autonomy is like, I'm empowering you to make these decisions. I'm here if you need help, but I only want you to come to me if you like really need my help, right? Or you
Yep.
just kind of need a little bit of validation on this
Yep.
solution you have. And autonomy comes from giving an abundance of clarity and direction, right?
Oh,
So when people are like, oh, like we don't need to have this SOP. And I'm like, we realize if you have a process down, then your team can think less about this process. They go through the workflow and they're like, oh, this could be improved. Oh, I have an idea for this, right? Or if we're saying like, I want you to be autonomous and be able to make these decisions, what are the outcomes of the decisions that you want? So you don't care about the journey, you care about the destination. Let me
Yes.
know the parameters of that destination. Where am I supposed to end up? And then I can make decisions, right? So like we can't confuse autonomy for just like they need to be hyper independent. They just need to be able to think on their own is what we're after, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, give them. I think of you go bowling, right? You take, or maybe okay, I'll admit it. Every time I go bowling, I get the bumpers up. Right? Like you have the bumper when you take a kid, you take the bumpers up so that you want to
Yeah.
stay on the lane. Like that, it's the guardrails. How provide
Yeah.
the guardrails and let you know where the destination is. Get there. I don't care how you get there. Some
Mm-hmm.
people, like I'm super, like my brother Renee, shout out Renee because he does all the editing and the clips and stuff. And it's
Nice.
like when we're working through it, I'm like, dude, I don't know exactly what I want. I don't know how to do what I want in terms of, but I want them to be fancier like this. And so he did it. He's like, yep, that's it. Can you add this? Yep. And so how he does it, how he gets there, this is
Mm-hmm.
the outcome that I'm seeking. And we have a process, right? Like we got the Trello board. Here's what's coming up. This one's next. Da, 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 so that
Mm-hmm.
he can go and do his thing. I mean, that's kind of a generic response and me just sucking up to him. So maybe he'll give me a discount on the editing. But anyways, you're 100% right. The autonomy thing, it's irresponsible to just throw people into a situation without clarity, without
Mm-hmm.
clear boundaries, guidelines, direction. It's the never ending, or maybe here's a question. Have you ever worked with a group or a person that suffers from unsecured commitments and uncommunicated expectations?
I feel like that's almost everyone we work with, right? No, what's interesting, I will say a lot of my work is almost like corporate therapy, right?
Mm,
I'm there to ask the questions. And a lot of times the questions I'm asking help the manager, help the CEO, whoever. And I always get this response, and almost every time I work with a client, they're like, oh, now that you asked that question, I'm thinking this, or these questions have helped me figure out that this is really what I wanted, right? So I
hmm.
think a lot of times we talk expectations and we don't even know what our own expectations are, right? And
Yeah.
I'm going to bring this back to actually really simple, real simple analogy here. My birthday is coming up, right? So now
Oh,
my husband, hey now, my husband's like, what do you want for your birthday? Like, and I am almost like, if everyone has ever watched New Girl, I'm like, I'll take myself to the movies. Like, unless you're going to meet my high expectations, let me not get my hopes up. I'm good, right? Like, I'll
yep.
celebrate my own birthday. So we're talking through, okay, what are the expectations here? Like, he knows I'm a foodie. Like, I love steak, right? And I'm
Mm,
like, listen, I don't care if it's going to be a real casual pizza dinner or if it's going to be a steak dinner. What I care about is I have time anxiety. So I care if we have a reservation. I don't want to show up and now we got to wait. And for my husband, it's fine to show up and wait because he wants to go to the bar and drink a little bit before we sit down for dinner.
yeah.
Like, my expectation is that we have a reservation and I'm able to sit and not stand in
Yeah.
my heels for 45 minutes before I get my steak, right?
Yeah.
So we've got to be really clear about what do I like, but really what are the expectations I want my team to have and how can I be hyper clear about that?
Oh, I love it. I love, and what I particularly love, and folks, if you missed it, sometimes we're horrible at being clear in our expectations with others because we are not even clear with ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And a Q&A dialogue with a, we'll say, objective party can help that situation 100%. So I'll ask you this, Samantha, for
Yeah.
you, how did you, like, what's your method for getting clear about your expectations? Because you just illustrated it beautifully. Is it something that
Mm.
you did naturally, or is there a process, a method that helped you get to that point?
Definitely not a natural thing. Like if we're talking learning and missteps, I misstep, I fell, I rolled down the mountain, I tried to get back up and I tripped on my shoelace. Like it was a journey, right? Like in my
Yes.
personal life and my professional life. I'm like, I just know that I'm frustrated, but I don't know why I'm frustrated. I don't know what my expectation is. And
Mm.
actually something that I realized, have you ever taken a personality test like Clifton Strengths,
Oh
Kobe?
yeah.
Yeah, I've taken like three in one day because I'm just like curious. I'm like, tell me the answers to myself, right? But one of my top five Clifton Strengths, if no one has ever taken that, I highly recommend you take it. One of my top five is a relator. And
Ah,
that means I like to achieve things alongside others, right? And
okay.
so makes me super good for what I do with my clients. I'm like, I want to see you succeed. In my business, though, it means, hey, like to get clear on this expectation, I'm going to brainstorm with my team. I'm going to say, hey, I have this
Mhm.
idea. I don't know where I'm trying to go. Like, can we talk through this? And because I've empowered my team to make decisions, they feel comfortable talking to me. Now we can have some real open dialogue. They might say an idea, and I'm like, I don't think that's going to work because of X, Y, and Z, or the client doesn't like this. That sounds good for us, but doesn't serve our client. Right. And we can go back
Yeah.
and forth. And then we're saying, okay, now this is my expectation. This is actually what I want. And so I think sometimes if we're not clear, you don't need to find the answer through journaling all the time. Just go talk to your team. Say, I want to brainstorm with you. Come talk to me about this.
Yeah, there's value in understand. Like I'm a hermit. You can ask several of my exes; they will all tell you, like, Jude, you got it. Like you're a real hermit for real.
Mm,
And so solitude is where I get my clarity. Now, just like you said, you don't have to go journal and go lock yourself in a cave. I think the
mhm.
more important thing is figure out what your style is. Like
Yeah.
yours is a group function, right? And the collaboration and the brainstorming and that sort of thing. I isolate or I embrace solitude. Scratch that.
Mm,
And I don't know that one is right or wrong, except that I know for me, without a doubt, solitude helps me get clear. Without a doubt, collaboration, group brainstorming helps you get clear. And so, for folks out there, if you're wondering, there's like no one answer, but figuring out what it is, what are the conditions that help you get clarity is ultra important, especially when you're leading and working with teams because they need to understand. You have to be able to communicate your expectation. They can't just read your mind. Otherwise, you're one of those
yeah.
bosses that's always moving the goalpost, and more is not a goal. That's an addiction. I know because it's my addiction, and it's not healthy for me or anybody else. What do you think about that, Samantha?
I completely agree. And I think that's maybe what the really tough part about being a manager or a leader in general is you got to be open to getting to know yourself. You've got to have that reflection. You've got to have that awareness. And so that's real tough, especially if we didn't grow up kind of having those conversations, if we don't have that support within our organization to figure myself out. And you don't have to I'm going to get myself in trouble. You don't have to go to therapy. I'm all for If you feel like you need therapy, I'm all for it. You just
Do
got to
it.
get used to talking about the challenge, right? That's
Yeah.
really what therapy is there for. Let's open up the conversation, the dialogue about this. And so many people feel, especially as a manager, oh, I've got to have the answer, or I've always got to be on my A game with my team. I can't let them see me be vulnerable, right? It's like, no, it's okay to do that. It's okay to like ask them questions, hear what they think. We go back to, hey, our warehouse guys, our frontline employees, they have some ideas. Like they're doing the work every day. They're your on the ground intelligence. Use them. You talk about every James Bond movie where they're like, we can use drones. And they're like, nothing beats the human intelligence of having our spy on the ground, right? Like your employees are your spies on the ground. It's okay to like not be on your A game with them all the time, right?
Oh, I love that. Like on the ground intelligence, like firsthand, they know what the hell's going on. And when you have a relationship with them, guess what? You get all the juicy intel that's going to
Mhm.
improve the business. Oh, so geez, I'm loving this. Okay. Now you've mentioned lean.
Okay.
We're talking a lot about leadership and self-awareness and personal development. I know some people that would say, what, like, why are you talking about lean and leadership? And then I also know some other people that are like, yeah, absolutely, they're synonymous. Where do you think that comes from? The divide there.
Yeah, well, I think most people, when they think about lean, all they know about it is Toyota. They're like, okay,
Yeah.
well, manufacturing robots, let's just put this set of screwdrivers next to this set of screws and problem solved, right? And the difference is, well, now we're talking about lean in a more human environment, right? Like, yeah,
Mhm.
during those manufacturing and in production lines, definitely we're not going to treat people like robots, but also robots can do some of this work, right?
Yes.
So now we've got to say, okay, how am I efficient with my team? How do I make people efficient? And when we talk about people being efficient, well, now they've got to be positive. Now I've got to talk about how do I make sure they have workplace satisfaction? How do I
Mm.
build trust to identify the issues that are really happening? How do I get their buy in so that when I make change, they're not totally resistant, right? It's totally okay to have some members of your team that are resistant to change. We need the doubters to say,
Yes.
did you
Yes.
think this through? Right? Like,
Yes.
I had to teach my team, push back. Like, I have a lot of ideas. You better push back with me. I don't
Mhm.
want someone that's like, yay, another change. Because now we're just changing for the sake of change. Like, I
Right.
welcome people that are resistant to change. Force me to prove to you why we need to do this. Right? Totally fine. But anyway, going back to, okay, how do I make people efficient? Right? We've got to have that cultural leadership element of it. We can't just be lean and mean, right? I love
Mm.
flowcharts. I love visualizing. I want to see, where does the flowchart not make sense? But at some point, that flowchart represents actions by real people, right?
Yes. Yes.
And if I'm not good with people, then I can't implement that change. I can't make this process work, right?
Yep. Oh, I love it. Beautiful. Now,
I mean, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
no, go, please.
I was gonna say, like, I was gonna ask you, like, what, I know we're talking a lot about me, but what are your instances of, like, you had a manager that was like lean and mean, and they had no people touch, right? Like, how did that go?
Yeah, well, it was me, Sam.
Talk about missteps and falling down the
It
hill.
was
It's
me.
Jesse. Jesse's been there, guys.
Yeah, when I got introduced to, and I'm kind of weird about it, but when I got introduced to lean, which
Mm,
at that point in my career, it was the last planner system. Only that, which in construction, a lot of us were at the point, I thought that was like the all there was to be around this lean idea. And so it's a planning and it's a collaborative planning system is what it is. Anyhow, I used it and it helped me. And I still credit the tool, the week, 1 week plan, 6 week look ahead, pull planning,
mm,
blah, 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 all those things, daily huddle. It's got all these elements. Me practicing that as a foreman is what catapulted my career because I was able to start, like, this is how I learned it. I learned last planner system. Then, like, I started doing that or trying to do it. Then I learned about the 8 wastes. And then
mm,
I learned about 5S, whereas like most people, they teach it, they approach it different. Anyways,
mhm.
so it started framing the way I thought, and I used that system to do my job, which it was just a function of me spending less time on wasteful things that made it seem like I was good. I wasn't good. I just spent less time doing wasteful things. That's bottom line. That's what it was. But
Yeah.
it helped me stabilize my environment. Now, because it had such an impact on me and the company I was working for was an employee owned company and we got bonuses by project. So
Mm,
I was pretty good at math and I looked at the estimate and I figured out, oh my God, here's the formula. If I install 20 feet of pipe an hour, that's budget. But if I install 22 feet of pipe per hour, I'm 10% under budget. That's money in my pocket.
yeah.
So what I started doing was applying that thinking and I started doing lean to people, right? Like, you better do this. You better, like, it
Mm.
was all about you're inefficient, you're waste, you got to be more productive, work smarter, not harder. And I just set challenging goals and wore people out.
I was
That
saying,
was
how'd that go for you, Jesse?
it,
How
it,
did
it was not too good. Like, people from we'll say from the office side, I got a lot of attention because look, he really cares and he's really trying and he's doing all these
Mm,
innovative things. From the field side, they're like, man, I hope that guy gets in a freaking car wreck on the way home. And
yeah.
that's what it was.
Yeah.
And so eventually I got to understand, like, instead of doing it to them, how can I teach these things instead of dictating it? How can I use the little stuff that I know to solve a particular problem for the guys? And if I solved a problem using my lean wizardry, they would be interested in doing more of it. And that's where the people side came into it. And then eventually it evolved into my understanding, just like you said, was the leadership aspect of it, because it absolutely can accelerate the growth of trust. And now my thinking is this: all the stuff that I've learned along the way, when I use it to build capability and remove hard work for the men and women that are doing the work, the rest is gravy, period.
Mhm.
If I'm trying to optimize for a particular outcome, it's still not bad, but that's like B team. A
Mhm.
team is make the work better for the people doing the work. And guess what? Not only do you enhance the quality of life for people, you also get those business outcomes that you're serving. So that's kind of where I'm at on the thing. And yes, I'm guilty.
I
I was,
I
I
have
was one of
so
them.
But it's okay because now you're like, I can speak from experience, right?
Yeah.
I have so many thoughts on this, and I'm going to start with the last thing you said of like, people are happier, and we've got the business outcomes, right? Businesses spend billions of dollars on culture initiatives, and I'm like, if we start with like operational excellence, we start with lean, all these other things will happen. And then
Yeah.
we could say, okay, cherry on top, little culture initiative. But you could significantly cut back expenses that you're spending just to do the work, but then also expenses on those culture things, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, why are we not starting with that? But let me go back to where you came with your planner and how you learned things in reverse. What's interesting with that is you learned outcomes first and then how to complain. If we were to
Yes.
go back to that conversation, like eight wastes, the 5S, cool, let's teach that. But why does it matter? It matters because that's how we go through the planner, right? And that
Yes.
we've got to start with that. And so where you kind of had the misstep, right? And where your company also had the misstep with you is two things. One, you had the KPI, right? Of like, you're going to get a bonus for these things. But what's the KBI, our key behavior indicators, right? So
Mm.
this is how I say this is what drives when I teach people, we got to have goal task alignment, right? Of like, that's how we know we're productive, we're not busy because what we're doing lines up with what we want to achieve, right? And so our KPI is really just the metric that says we're making progress on our goal,
Right.
right? But our KBI, the key behavior indicator, this is like, okay, this is my daily action, right? So
Yeah.
if I want my manager to be on budget with my project, that's my KPI. But how do I want my manager to do that? What are the
Yeah.
actions, the behaviors that they need to do to meet this KPI? Right. And I feel like if
Mm.
that was explained to you, you probably would have pulled back a little bit on the lean and mean. Right.
Oh, sister, yes, and it was explained. We didn't. I love the KBI, right? Key behavioral
Mhm.
indicator, because yes, again, puzzle piece. Like I had a boss. He passed away, but he was my mentor and my boss at the time. And he pulled me to the side. He's like, "Jess, you're great at getting results. You deliver projects. Our clients hate you. Our people hate you, but you make money." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know." Like we need better clients and you need to hire better people. And he's like, well, maybe if
What's
everybody
the
has
common factor?
exactly. And he was very clear. He said, if you want to expand your influence in this organization, you
Mm,
need to do two things. You need to deliver financial success and you need to develop and grow people.
mm,
And you're failing at one. And it's not bad. You'll have a job. You're going to be the best damn foreman forever. And if that's okay with you, then keep
mhm,
doing what you're doing. But if you want to grow your influence and really start exploring the potential that you have, you're going to have to learn how to develop people. And I was out, man, you want to talk about having a pouty fit. Like I was not a happy guy. Luckily, the organization was TD Industries. They
mm,
had the mechanism to equip me with this other thing that I needed, servant leadership and this other, like the philosophy of lean and developing people, etc. And so I said, okay, fine, sign me up for these stupid things. And I say, like, at the moment, that was my attitude. But I'm also, like ultra grateful for it because not only did I need to be introduced to it, there was also the learning period of like not resorting. I still had the shadow, my
mm.
reputation of people, how I treated people like garbage or like tools. I just treated people like they were disposable. So even when I tried to turn the corner, I would get upset because people still like were still reacting to me like I was a bad guy. And like, no, but I'm not a bad guy anymore. Like, forget about it, let it go. And they're like, wait a minute, don't like I haven't even given them healing time. So, anyways, it was all of that transition that I had to go through. And to
Yeah.
now, if the program was like the puzzle pieces were fit together between the
Mm,
KPI and the KBI,
mhm.
my learning curve, the pain would have been shorter and reduced. And so when you're out there supporting clients, serving the people that you serve, is that like part of the structure, part of the learning, this KPI, KBI thing?
Yeah, so a lot of times it depends on the type of company I'm walking into, right?
Yep.
But when we're first figuring out, okay, what is the scope of work for how we're going to approach this, depending on where that executive management team is at, I'll say we got to do some lead leadership training before we even dive into
Mhm.
understanding these processes, and we definitely teach on those things, and it really equips them to be able to lead some change. And what's awesome is that, I mean, if we're doing our job right, we're working ourselves out of a job, right? Like
Absolutely. Yes.
if the managers of that organization should be able to take charge once we're done. And so what's really cool about that lead leadership training is before we even dive into their first set of processes, I can see their gears turning and they're like, oh, I thought about this, or like, oh, I went ahead and I started changing this, is that okay? I'm like, you don't need my approval, it's not my company, like it's your team, go ahead and go change it, that's awesome. Like, just make sure you've got the follow-up, tell me how it goes, like, did that change achieve what you wanted it to, right? Like, now we've got to talk through that.
Right.
Going back to like the accountability and autonomy we talked about before, is we can't just change it and then say it's fixed, right? We've got to follow up on
That's the
that.
point.
But
Yep.
yeah, it definitely is. It's a big thing to teach them. But I think also on that note is when we dive into processes, I take a very collaborative approach, right? You introduce me as a people first kind of person. Like,
Yep.
this is collaboration, and that's how I'm going to get you on board for change. It's also how I'm going to figure out what's really going on. And through that's when we start to have those conversations of, okay, what can we do differently? What are the action steps here that are going to lead to this? So people start to, without really understand or remembering the definitions, without remembering the textbook of KBI and KPI, they start to think that way. And that's
Yeah.
really what we want.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm stealing that, the thinking, right? Because just being clear about it, right? Like, yes, we can achieve the outcome. Like, I have this conversation with construction executives all the time. Like, yeah, like, why are you here? Why do you do this job? Like, to make money. Our purpose is we're here to make money. And like, construction is a hard ass business. It chews people up and spits them out. And if you're really great, you're making 4%, which is not a lot of money. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
bull, because if you were here, if you really wanted to make money, you would sell pictures of your feet on the internet, right? It's way less risk, high margin. Like, you're not
Mm-hmm.
in construction to make money. But
Mm-hmm.
so my point is, there's a lot of ways to make money, right? There's other illegal things that you could do. And so if the point is to make money or make earnings, the behavior idea or the behavior conversation is extremely important, because you can do it in nefarious ways that steal life from people, or you can do it in ways that help grow, nurture the talent that's around us. And it's a matter of it comes down to the behaviors of the leader. So
Yep.
anyway, thank you for that. Now,
Yeah.
the introduction I mentioned, and I don't want to leave people hanging, or like, and also selfishly, right? I want some more nuggets from you. You know, I mentioned your experience, your wizardry with virtual assistants and
Mm-hmm.
automation.
Yes.
What are some of the high friction points for people when you're suggesting or recommending automation or virtual assistants? Or which one, actually, here's a better question. Which one are people most resistant to? Automation or virtual assistants?
I feel like it really depends on who we're talking to, right?
Yeah.
Have you been burned before by one of those things, right?
Mm.
Or then it's like, okay, now there's a reason for our resistance. Let's talk through this, right? Like, going back to expectations, right? Well, often we sometimes learn what our expectations are when we realize where shit just went, not where we wanted it to
Yes.
go. So with the virtual assistant, I will say it's scary, especially in construction, because in construction, we're so used to office. People are going
Mm.
to show up in the office, right? And I'm like, well, you're already used to talking remotely to your field people, right? So what's really the difference here? So we've got to figure that out. And then also IT people are like, well, what cybersecurity? What are they going to steal? And I'm
Uh-huh.
like, okay, let's talk through this, right? What's the VA going to have access to, right? They're going to
Yep.
probably have an email account under your a company organization anyway, so you have full control over permissions, you have full control over shutting their account down if you don't want to work with them anymore. I think another piece of it, the more common, though, is people think virtual assistant and they're going to start thinking international assistants,
Yep.
which again is really where that security concern comes in play. And I've worked with people overseas and I've had great experiences with them, but I also understand that's not everyone's cup of tea. So everyone on our team is US based. Everyone on our team lives in the US, has experience as an executive assistant or project coordinator or something, right? So we're bringing people in that have a high level of trust, or you can trust them at least, and they have a high level of experience. So also, we just got to figure out, what have you experienced before and what do you believe is true? What are the myths that you've heard about this industry? And we'll start tearing those down. On the automation side, again, construction. so used to our clipboards and our pens.
Oh,
Like,
hold on. What are you talking about? What do you mean?
hey, listen, I've got a paper planner. I write things down. Okay, I've got a paper notebook. I don't have an AI note taker that joins my meetings. I write that stuff down because that's how my brain remembers it, right? Like, I
Yes.
didn't develop study habits in high school. I just wrote it down and I remembered it. I aced the test, right? So I'm fine.
Mhm.
But what are the things that we're writing down that could be way easier, right? What are the things that I've worked with some companies where they have a field supervisor that is putting the same data points on his notebook and in like 4 different forms. And then
Yep.
we've got these forms go to different spreadsheets. And I'm like, what is happening? So at some point, I'm like, I don't even care if you have a formal project management system that's going to automate. I just care that we are consolidating and we're collaborating efficiently. Like, let's just start there, right?
Yes.
And then we can talk about, okay, what can we automate? We look at managers. Managers spend 56% of their time on administrative tasks. Why are you paying them so much money to be
Yes.
a high level thinker and develop your team if they're spending more than half of their time on things an admin, a virtual assistant can do? Let's solve this, right? So when we go back to lean and we think, oh, manufacturing, we think what a robot can do. The robot lives in our computer. Let's let the robot do the work,
Yep.
right? And if you're afraid of, oh, well, data is going to get lost, a step is going to get missed, the automation is going to break, then we have checks and balances, right?
Yeah.
Someone's reviewing that report, someone's looking at it at the end of the day, right? So if they see something that's missed, they know to speak up, they know the steps to follow. So let's just figure out what is the concern here, and then what are the, if we need 3 points for quality control and checks and balances to make you feel good, cool, let's do it. Let's just figure out what that is so your managers can go do what they're really good at and what you're
Yeah.
paying them so much money to go do, right?
Oh, and the managers would love you for that, right? Like free from this garbage work that I hate, right? Like the life out of me. Like
Right?
that's what it is. I thank you for that because I'm sure not an L&M family member. It's like squirming when they hear this idea. But no, I know a lot of people, including me, that have been or still are extra apprehensive about this
Mm-hmm.
automating and virtual assistant thing. Now, I also know because I was there, we'll just say 8 years ago, like, what do you mean assistant? Like, no, I love scheduling my hotel and my flight and my Uber and doing my timesheet and expense reports and scheduling calls 10 times a day. Like, no, I don't. I hate that.
I was like, where are we going with this, Jesse? Like, oh my God, like you're explaining a nightmare.
Well, that's most people's jobs. Like you said it, right? They
Yeah.
spend so much of their time doing that. Now, if for somebody that is VA curious, right, virtual
Mm,
assistant curious, or sick and tired of those administrative things, what do you like, generally speaking, doesn't matter what industry,
mm.
what would you recommend people look at or consider in terms of high leverage things or even low leverage things that they could easily hand off to a VA?
Yeah, so we actually have a guide for this. And
Oh,
if we have show notes, we can have a link for this. It's called our Stay Focused and Delegate Guide. It is crafted a
ooh,
little bit more on the entrepreneur side, right? Where that's going to be a different set of admin tasks than maybe an EA in an established organization, but still a lot of similarities. So hopefully we can link that and you can get that guide.
absolutely.
Jesse's like, I want to see it right now. Super easy. It's a checklist. But I would start thinking, first, let's think about outcomes. If we go back to expectations, big money talk, outcomes. And a lot of times we're like, I just want someone in my mind who can anticipate my needs. I need someone proactive. I don't want someone like, yeah, they can do my inbox, they can do the scheduling, but I've got to train them. I've got to teach them how to do that. I don't want to do that. So I can give you all the lists of things they can do. But ultimately, what you want is someone who's going to anticipate your needs and do some of the thinking for you. And they're going to
Mm,
be able to say, hey, I saw you had this coming up. Can I do X, Y, and Z for you? Or we met last week. You said you would do this. I don't see it. Do you need help from me or do you just need me to keep reminding you? Right.
mm,
And to get to that proactive state, we've got to think about, okay, what would they have to know and do for them to be able to do this, right? For them to be able to say, I see you have XYZ coming up, then, okay, we've got to have some calendar management in that. For them to be able to say, okay, like, I did this job costing report. I did this spreadsheet for you. Okay, they've got to have some data entry responsibilities before this, right? So
mhm,
the easy way to think about it, what you'll hear a lot is, well, just think about the stuff that frustrates you. Think about what's eating up your time. I'm like, I don't always do that because sometimes I like to hyper focus and ignore the problems I have going on with my clients and my
Yes,
business. And I want this low level admin project. I need that. Okay. Like, don't take that away from me. That's my, like you said earlier, my solitude. That's my cave. I'm going to focus on this and ignore all messages for 3 hours. Okay. And it's like, do I need to do that? No. Can someone else do that for me? Yes, but I need this for myself. Right. So, yeah, you could think about what frustrates you. But you could also just think about, okay, if I had a mini me, Dr. Evil, if I had a mini me who like thought like me, who helped me, but wasn't a manager. Now I'm not going to pay a full-time person to sit in the office and shadow me or go to the field and shadow me,
yep.
right? What can that part-time remote person do so they can start to think on your behalf? And then we'll
Mm.
work back from
Ah, yes. Give me two. I'll take two.
that.
Thank you, first of all. Like, thank you.
Mm,
Absolutely. We need to put that link so that the L&M family out there can get that. Stay focused,
sure.
the Stay Focused and Delegate guide. And I'll also just preface it with some of my brethren of the Control Freak clan. It
Mm.
may give you anxiety as you read it, but it's okay. You don't have to do anything. You're just reading it, right?
Yeah, just dip your toe in the water, right? You can take your toe right out if it feels cold. Dip it in, and you know what? I'm gonna connect the dots. It's gonna go back to expectations.
Mm,
Why are we afraid to delegate? Because we don't think they're gonna meet our expectations. Do they know our expectations? Do we have processes in place for them to follow? If I give you a recipe, so whenever I teach processes, I'm like, how do you write an SOP? Think about a recipe. You've got the title of the food you're making. You've got all the ingredients, the oven temperature, how long it's going to cook for, and all the steps. At Christmas, I make a beef Wellington like Gordon Ramsay. Do
woo,
I know how to do anything else like Gordon Ramsay? Absolutely not. But I know how to make a beef Wellington and it tastes damn good.
that's fancy too.
Oh, we go back to the I'm a foodie, right? Like
Yeah,
the only reason I
yeah.
work out is so that I can eat really good food, okay?
Yeah. But I think actually that
Mm,
recipe example is perfect, right?
mhm.
Like, I turn my nose up at SOPs, but give me the recipe to make that beef Wellington and I'll follow that. It's the same
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Instead of
I'm like,
the ingredient, like, come on.
SOPs just sound like a corporate asshole. We don't want corporate language. I get that. Okay. So, really, an SOP, it could be a video. Use Trainual if you want to
Mm,
get software. It could be a checklist, right? Usually, my SOPs are this is the super detailed version in case you have any questions, but here's the flow chart. Here's the
mm,
visual so you know what's happening. This SOP is your resource when you have questions. You don't have to ask me the question because I don't have time to answer your question sometimes. Like, here. And now you know how to solve this problem because the answer is right here for you. So, I think you just got to be, yeah, we have this rigid vocabulary, but let's think about, again, the outcome. What really do we need our team? Or what does our team really need? What's the resource they need? How do we equip them with that? Right?
yeah. Yeah, 100%. Oh my God. I feel like you just gave a free lesson to me and a bunch of people that are going to be listening to
I'll
this.
send you my invoice later. It's fine.
10 4. Send it to my virtual assistant.
Oh, yeah. There we go. We'll have them pay for it. You don't even see it. It's fine.
Oh my goodness. Well, this has been amazing. You and I, on our first call, we talked about a mastermind.
Yes, we did. Yeah.
So what is that? What's the idea there that, because you and I hadn't even prepped for this, but what are you thinking there?
I volunteer a lot with business organizations, mostly because I'm a mom. I've got 2 kids. My husband travels. I can't volunteer a lot outside of work hours because I've got little toddlers. That's okay. So, what works for me is volunteering in business organizations. And so, I've done several idea labs and masterminds. And really, what I've noticed is, again, we come back to like, I like to brainstorm with people. I like to ask those questions. And I think sometimes we don't always have the space to do that.
Mhm.
Even myself, I'm part of some networking groups that claim to have masterminds. I'm like, I don't feel comfortable asking any of these people questions. Like,
Mhm.
and so I think something I would have really loved, not only when I was an employee in the corporate world, but also now as an entrepreneur, is I just want to show up and ask questions. Like, I have this idea, I have this problem, I'm struggling with this, right? What are your ideas? Have you dealt with this before, right? Like, Jesse, you're saying you learn from me, but I learn from you from your LinkedIn content, from the chats that we've had, right? Like, I'm always open to learning. And so I think a mastermind is really just creating that space for people where they know they can show up and they can have the answers or at least brainstorm some possible answers for the challenges they have. And if you don't have any, I mean, I've shown up to masterminds, I don't have any questions, but I just sit and listen. And I'm like, oh, I think I had that problem. Like,
Right,
let
right,
me just
right.
steal that.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is it's like a confluence or a group of folks that have a shared experience to have a conversation and share experience. And so in this context, what I'm smelling, the Wellington that you're cooking, it smells
Hey.
like a group of people, entrepreneurs or people that are working on a project, launching their own thing. Let's have a like a group conversation to share problems, ask questions of each other, kick ideas around. How close am I?
Yeah, that's, you're pretty on it, right? Like we want that peer advisory group, right? Like corporate
Mm.
organizations, they've got that board to say that's a dumb idea or this is what we want, this is the good idea, right? And
Yep.
so we don't always have that. Even whether you're an entrepreneur or you're a manager, sometimes as a manager you also don't have that support, right? So like let's come together, let's just be your peer advisory group and let's solve this together because I care about your success, right? Like that's the most important thing is like there's people that are involved that are not just there for their own self interests, but actually care about you getting ahead.
Ooh, so all right, I'm sold, and I got a name for it. It's
Ooh,
called "Do the Damn Thing" Advisory Board.
maybe it's the get your shit together board. We're just
Oh,
gonna
I
we'll
like
just
that one
change it every time based on
every
the
time.
questions, right? Like you have the idea, why have you not done it? Just do the damn thing. Or what are
Yeah,
you doing? Get your shit together. If anyone has any other ideas of vulgar ways we can name this group, please send Jesse that voicemail in LinkedIn, and we'll get creative.
yes. Well, I mean, but I'm serious.
Yeah.
You and I, we had that kind of conversation. I have this thing that I call the whispers, where
Mm,
I look for data points or signals, or I pay attention to them. And when I see little signals that I call whispers in weird places that are on the same trajectory, it's like, oh, there's something there. I need to do something with it. And so there's been several conversations besides the one you and I've had that I've been a part of groups that are not even really associated with each other, where this idea, this mastermind, I'll say condition or lack thereof has come up.
yeah.
And so, yes, we're joking. Don't know exactly. I like the flip, right? Get your shit together
Yeah.
advisory board and the do the damn thing advisory board. Because yes, right, the puzzling again. But for
Yeah.
real, I'm going to be sending out a calendar invite here probably within the next 5 weeks. So actually, 5 weeks from today, within that time
Mhm.
frame, Samantha, we'll send out a calendar invite. We're going to do something. Now,
Yeah.
if you're listening to this, it's probably a week from the release date of this episode. So,
Yeah.
like Samantha said, hit me up, DM something if you're interested. Um, we got to do it. What do you say? Yeah.
I am so on board because I was whispering to myself years ago, and I almost started something called Build Your Luck because successful businesses aren't lucky, they're built. And I never got it off the ground. And so I am so open to the opportunity to collaborate on this because I think also sometimes we show up to certain groups and we're like, no one here is ambitious as I am. Or show up to some groups and they're like, it's all namaste mindset mastermind. And I'm like, I got Jesus in my pocket. I don't need your namaste chakras. Thank you very much. Like, let's move on. Right. And so, like, I'm like, okay, definitely there are moments where I have mindset blocks. Help me work through that. And that's
Yeah.
where we get to do the damn thing. Right. But yeah, give me a space to show up and also express that relator skill that I love so much of like helping others achieve a goal.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we can also smile. I can have fun while telling you serious shit. Like, oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, that is a magic skill. I know because my buddies used to the guys I used to work with in the day. They would say, like, "Jess, like you're wicked. There's something you're evil." I'm like, okay, why? And like I've seen you write people up, suspend people, and terminate people smiling, and I'm like, well, I'm not smiling. Like I'm smiling because I'm uncomfortable, and I
Mm,
also know that I have exhausted my resources to
hmm.
give that person the support to achieve the goal, achieve the intended outcome, and they're going to be better off somewhere else. Like I did everything I
Yeah.
possibly can. This is just not the best place for them and it's uncomfortable. So yeah, I could smile and do the same thing like come on man, get it together. You got to go.
Yeah. I remember when we first started chatting and you kind of posed the question of like what's something some people don't know about you. And I was like, yeah, like I'll smile and make you feel good, but I'll tell you how it is, right? Like, what's the point of me making you feel good if like we're not going to do something with it? That's like companies spending billions of dollars on culture, but everyone actually really hates working there because nothing makes sense, right? Like, let's ask the tough questions and let's go for it.
Yeah, I think some people might get their feathers ruffled because that's not
Mm.
nice, but I think it's
Mm.
kind, right? Like, let's be direct, let's be clear.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about hurting your feelings. I'm actually more committed to serving you than I am making you feel all lovey dovey.
Yeah, and that is, I'm going to go back to, and this could apply to males, but I'm going to bring it back to the feminine here because someone asked me like, oh, like, how do you always show up in rooms that are like male dominated, right? And it's
Yep.
like, well, there's like a female authoritative version to take on to this, right? Like,
Mhm.
I can tell you how it is because I was empathetic with you before. I took the time to listen to you and to understand what you were going through and to understand why these challenges matter to you and what your employees are feeling. And now I can tell you how it is because I have that trust with you, right? And that's something that, again, men can do this. I'm not trying to say you can't do this, Ben, but like that's something that comes naturally to me. I think partly because I am a woman. I'm like made to kind of listen to you a little bit, right? And so,
Mhm.
yeah. And I think you can't just tell someone how it is if you don't understand what it is, if you don't have that compassion, right? And that's, I mean, you look at, I'm a mom, right? So I'm going to pull on Inside Out. If anyone else is a mom and you see Inside Out and you understand why sadness matters, right? We can't just be happy and tickle our way through shit. We've got to like just take the time to be empathetic and understand why we're upset in the first place. Okay, now we've got the mindset done. We've got our feelings out. Now let's go do something about it, right?
Yes. Yes. That's all I'm going to say.
Right.
Yes.
I like to make things as simple as possible for
That's it.
people to understand. And a lot of
That's it.
times that just comes from food and being a mom. So,
Oh, folks, if you can't grasp that, you got problems. So well said, Samantha. I mean,
mm,
frank, concise, clear, totally relatable. Like, oh, that's it. I'm gonna leave it there. Now,
okay.
so we're
Mm.
gonna keep on talking, but you got to work out. You motivated me to work out last time, so I'm gonna
Are you
make
telling
sure.
me I need to work out?
No,
You trying
no,
to
I'm
say,
not.
no, I'm just,
But you said you were, and since you
oh, I
motivated
did.
me, I want to motivate you.
Yes.
Um, so we're gonna wrap it up with the closing question. You ready? It's a
Yes.
simple one.
Mhm.
What is the promise you are intended to be?
It's not a simple question. You want that to be it. You want to like make people feel less scared of the question by saying that, but it's not
Yeah.
simple. Okay, you know what? I thought a lot. I knew my answer the first time you told me you were going to ask me this question, but I did go back and forth on how I was going to share this. And you know what? I actually wore my God is good shirt today. And
Yes.
earlier I said I've got Jesus in my pocket, right? The promise I'm intended to be, I do not know because it is not something I decide. So I'll say that very straight up. It's not something I decide. The promise I'm intended to be is something that's going to come from the Holy Spirit and for God for me. And so if someone's listening and they're like, hey, I'm not faith based, first off, message me. I love controversial conversations. I said I'm a relator. Like, let's talk about it. I'm
Yep.
not trying to convert you, but let's talk about it, right? But it also, if you're not a faith based person, really what that means, at least for me, is I'm going to be humble. I'm going to really try to serve. I'm going to be open to new opportunities because I don't know what my promise is going to be. I see people that are maybe purpose life coaches. I'm like, you can't tell me my purpose. My purpose don't come from you. Like, you don't know my purpose because I don't know my purpose. And my purpose is probably ever changing. My purpose today is going to change tomorrow because of who I'm going to be around and how he's going to use me for that. Right.
Mm.
So that's my answer. I don't know what my promise is. I just know I'm supposed to be a humble servant. So,
Oh my God. I love your best answer. I love it. Well done. And
oh,
folks,
thank you.
go back and replay that, like for real. Because so many of, I mean, I think a lot of us get trapped in this thinking like, I have to definitively articulate my purpose that's measured to KPIs and KBIs and every other freaking I. Like, it doesn't have to be that way, right? Like, I
Yeah.
don't know. Maybe my purpose is just to be a servant and walk on the path and let the path reveal itself. Oh my
Mhm.
God. Amazing. Did you have fun?
I had so much fun. This was great. This was awesome.
Good, good. Well, thank you for your time, Miss Samantha. This was too much fun.
We're gonna get in trouble, have some little evil laughs. I'm ready.
Dang, you stuck around all the way to the end. And I hope the reason you stuck it like all the way through was because you were getting a lot of value out of the conversation. I always give at least one, most of the time, a handful of good nuggets, good ideas, good perspectives that I can take and apply into my life going forward. That's the whole point. I want to share that with you guys and also highlight the amazing people that they are. And I want to end this by saying, if you feel like you've been living out a script that was written for somebody else, and you feel like you're in the wrong skin, I know that life. And all I did was numb myself to make it through to another day, which if you're there, you know how hopeless that feels. I want to recommend that you check out Becoming the Promise You Are Intended to Be. The stories in this book will help you know that you're not alone. They're my personal stories, like the real stuff that I went through, and I'm sharing them because it helps keep me sober. It helps me contribute my gifts and my talents in service to others. It helps me turn my failures, my shame, my embarrassment into something useful and positive. So check it out. Be kind to yourself, be cool, and we'll talk at you next time. Peace.